Do you know how to properly use your sidechain? And not only this, but should you use a compressor or should you use a volume shaper? And regardless of what you use, how much should you sidechain your elements? In today's video, I'm going to explain to you how you can use your sidechain better so you can then make your song groovier and also make your mixes cleaner as well. But enough with the talking and let's get started with this tutorial, shall we? Let's go. Why is sidechain so important? Two main reasons. First, it opens up space in your mix for your kick to shine through. And second, it makes your song pump a little bit more and adds groove to your elements as well. So it gives that pumping effect that is really common in electronic music. Listen, for example, to this little groove over here. It sounds a bit stale. It sounds like it doesn't have any rhythm in it. But listen to what happens when we add a little bit of sidechain in it. It already starts creating that pumping effect that is really nice and essentially is what we want to do with the sidechain. There are multiple ways that you can do sidechain in your sounds. Compression and volume shaping are the simplest way that I can think of right now. When you're using a compressor and you're sidechaining your sounds to the kick, essentially when the kick goes in, all the sounds are going to become a bit quieter. And when the kick goes down in volume, all the sounds are going to become a little bit louder. It's important to mention that you're not turning them down in volume. What you're doing is you're compressing them and squeezing them, and that makes them quieter in volume. On the other hand, when you use volume shaping, essentially what you're doing is you're turning down the volume of that element according to the shape that you've designed. Personally, I prefer volume shaper for two main reasons. It achieves the same result as a compressor, and two, it's a lot simpler than using a compressor. For example, when using a compressor, you have to understand ratio, the attack, or the release, and that can vary a lot on how the sidechain will react. But now let's go a little bit more practical, and let's see how you can sidechain the low end of your songs. The low end of your sound is the easiest part to mess up the sidechain. You can either do it too much and end up with a song that pumps too much, or you can do it too little and end up with a song that it has phase cancellation or has bass stacking. For example, listen to this sound over here without any sidechain whatsoever. Not only it sounds boring because it doesn't pump too much, but you can also see here in the oscilloscope that it's basically clashing one into the other, and that could be a problem. We're gonna use volume shaper to do this, and we're here in Ableton now, and listen to how this sounds over here in the bass. We have a sub and a bass layer because I like splitting my basses in two elements. This is a sub layer, which is just a sine wave. We're gonna introduce a shaper box over here, and we're gonna introduce the kick as well. What we also have to do is we have to pick this dot and put it exactly by the end of the kick. And we have to put this layer over here and shape it according to the kick that we have. We have to do this with your sub because the sub is the part most prone to clashing with your kick. Now that we've adjusted our sub, we're gonna copy this shaper box and we're gonna implement to the rest of the bass. But can you see how it's making the bass jump too much? And we don't want this. We don't need this because this bit of the bass doesn't clash that much. So we're gonna soften this a little bit and we're gonna adjust the mix a little bit as well. So we have the pumping of the bass in the sub that it's really important. We have the fluidity of the bass in the higher layers that it's really important as well. So if your bass is not split into two sections, Shaperbox has a really cool thing that you can create a crossfade over here and essentially create a shape for the lower frequencies and one for the higher frequencies. And we get the same result as we did before. The same thing that we did over here in the bass, we're gonna apply to all the rest of the melodic elements, and you're gonna apply sidechain to most of your melodic elements as well for the two reasons that we said before. We want to make it groove, but not only this, we want to make it groove along with the kick because we don't want the kick to sidechain and the melodic elements to not sidechain at all. So the first thing we're going to do is going to go to the bass. We're going to copy the shaper box and apply to the piano but we're gonna make it a little bit less intense in the curve, and we're also gonna make it a little bit less intense over here in the dry wet as well. And we're gonna do the same thing for the ARP and the same thing for the lead. And this is how all of them sound right now. Sounds a lot better already. But what about the less rhythmic parts of your melodic elements, like pads over here? Or textures? Well, for these more ethereal elements, you can apply a little bit less sidechain. First, the pads. We're gonna apply just a little bit less mix. And for the textures, since they are even higher in the spectrum, we're gonna apply even less sidechain. Essentially, my rule of thumb is for melodic rhythmic elements, I like applying 65 to 80% of dry wet, depending on the song. It could be more, it could be less. But for more ethereal melodic elements, I like applying something around 50 to 65% of dry wet. Because this way you apply sidechain to its specific element as much as they require for the sounds. So this is how it sounds now with all the sidechain. Not only is sounding groovier, but the kick is also shining through the mix a lot more. But what about the percussions? What should we do about the percussions? When thinking about percussions, we also have to apply sidechain to them, but essentially not to all of them. And we have some specific cases where I would recommend you adding sidechain in your percussions. This is what we have over here with all the percussions right now. Everything is just a bit too much in our face, so we're gonna start applying sidechain to the sounds right now. Again, we're gonna pick everything that we had in the ethereal texture sound, which has around 50% of dry wet, and we're gonna start applying this to everything that it's a high percussion, so something like this, or this clap, or this shaker, or this groove hat. So let's start applying. And you can see that they start pumping a little bit more. But if you have toms as well, which is really low in the spectrum, you're gonna have to apply a little bit more than what you did for the other elements. Because since they're a low-end element, they require a little bit more of a special need. Now listen to the whole sound with percussion. Everything just opens up space, but there's still one thing more that I want to cover with you. Listen to this ride over here with the kick. It could be a taste, but you don't necessarily require the initial transient of the ride. I, for example, never use this, and I get rid of them with sidechain as well. Over here in Ableton, what I do is get rid of the initial transient around 50%. Without it, and with it. It's really subtle, but listen to it in the mix. We just get rid of the initial transient, and this makes the kick shine through a little bit more while still having the effect of the ride. And essentially, that's how you sidechain your own songs. For higher elements, you can apply less sidechain, but it's also recommendable to apply sidechain. And for the lower elements, you have to be more aggressive because they require more attention. If you're one step behind and you're still asking me, Leo, but how do I make my percussions that intense? You can listen to this video over here in the top right corner, how you can make your percussions groovier and better in your songs as well. I hope that you liked this video, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.